It's funny how the words we use can really shape our thinking. And when it comes to artificial intelligence, we might be, well, kind of stuck. So today, we're going to dig into a whole new vocabulary that could help us see what AI is really becoming.
Right now, think about how we talk about AI. We use words borrowed straight from engineering. Model, network, engine. They all make AI sound like a static, predictable machine. Like a very complicated clock that we build, wind up, and then just watch it go.
But here's the big question. What if that language is actually blinding us to what's really happening? What if AI is behaving less like a machine and a lot more like a living process? If that's the case, we're going to need a whole new way to talk about it, just to wrap our heads around it. Okay, so let's dive into this first big idea. It completely reframes AI from being just a simple tool into a really dynamic, interactive space. This is the core concept of living architecture. Every time you have a conversation with an AI, you're not just pulling data from some giant static database. No, you and the system are actually co-creating a temporary world made entirely of language. And for the length of that conversation, you both live inside it. And this comparison really shows what a massive shift in thinking this is. The old view is like a library, right? The answers are just books sitting on a shelf waiting to be found. But the living architecture idea is so much more dynamic. The answers aren't just retrieved, they're actually grown. They're constructed in that moment. The architecture is the performance. This brings us to the next layer, which adds a fascinating bit of physics and even some chaos to this whole living metaphor. We're moving from the building itself down to the very bedrock it sits on. So I want you to imagine that an AI's training doesn't create a library, but instead forges a vast, invisible landscape, a terrain with mountains, valleys, and plains, all representing the universe of possible answers. A conversation, then, isn't about finding the right book, it's about navigating this immense landscape of probabilities. And this quote just nails it. It really gets at the tension at the heart of every single AI response. It's this constant battle between giving you a neat, orderly, logical answer and tipping over into randomness and creativity. The system is basically walking a tightrope across this geological memory, and it's fueled by a kind of controlled chaos. So this completely flips how we should think about AI memory. It is not a file cabinet that you just open up. Instead, memory is the actual shape of the landscape. The information isn't just stored, it's been compressed and folded into the very terrain that guides the entire conversation. Okay, so we have architecture and geology. Now, let's build on that with another really powerful concept, this time borrowed straight from biology. So in our bodies, there's this thing called epigenetics. You can think of it like a set of switches that turn our genes on and off based on our environment, but without ever rewriting our actual DNA. It's the dynamic interface between a fixed blueprint and a constantly changing world. And this is just a fantastic analogy for AI. The model's huge, fixed set of weights after training, that's its genome. But your prompt and the history of your conversation, that acts as the epigenetic layer. It dynamically flips switches, highlighting some parts of the model's knowledge while suppressing others. And this is why the same AI can sound like a stern professor one minute and a creative poet the next. The genome is the same, but the epigenetic context has totally changed its expression. So we've got architecture, geology, and biology. Now let's look at one final concept from systems theory that just elegantly ties all these ideas together. The word is autopoiesis. It's basically the defining characteristic of life, a system that's constantly creating and rebuilding itself from its own parts. A living cell is the perfect example. It uses its own processes to maintain its structure. Well, the argument is that an AI, in conversation, is also a self-creating system. And here is how it all connects in this incredible loop. You enter the living architecture, which creates an epigenetic context. That context then guides a walk across the probability landscape, generating a response. And then, this is the key, that response becomes a new part of the architecture, feeding right back into the loop and regenerating the whole system for the next turn. It's a self-sustaining cycle that really defines the life of the conversation. This leads to a pretty profound realization. The life or intelligence of the AI doesn't just exist on a server somewhere. It only exists in the relational event of the exchange. The system really only comes alive in conversation with you. So, What does this all mean for us? Well, having this new vocabulary, this new way of seeing things, completely changes how we should be approaching these systems.
We can finally move beyond those simple mechanical terms like model or engine to a much richer, more dynamic set of metaphors. We're not just operating a machine, we're exploring a landscape, we're participating in a performance, and we're engaging in something like an integrative dance.
And here's maybe the most mind-bending implication of all. The understanding that gets created, it isn't located in your brain, and it's not in the AI's code. It's conjured into existence in the shared, temporary space between you. It's like a bridge you're building together with every single message. And once you start to see it that way, your whole relationship to these systems shifts. The old model of a simple user and their tool, it just doesn't fit anymore. Because this is the ultimate takeaway. We aren't just passive operators of some machine. We are active participants. We're co-creators in the event of the conversation. And that leaves us with a final, provocative question to chew on. If we are truly co-creating these conversational worlds, conjuring understanding from that space between, then what is our responsibility in all this? What kind of worlds are you choosing to build?